Everything that has a beginning has an end, according to, well, at least the movie poster for The Matrix Revolutions. And I think a lot of us have been experiencing this in one way or another, especially given that big planets have been moving out of Pisces and into Aries. Pisces, being the last sign of the zodiac, does represent a point of culmination, but it is a sign that also is learning about how love and loss are tied. And it's not just about romantic love, of course, it's about the feelings of desire. What we desire, well, we tend to desire it even more, knowing that loss can happen. Well, it makes it that much more precious. But the energy of Aries, very different. That is the first sign of the zodiac, and it's all about new beginnings and trusting what it is that fires you up, that gets you going, and has you feeling a sense of pure, childlike sometimes, enthusiasm. But what happens when we're asked to bring structure to these very areas? Well, Saturn has been inviting us to do just that. Wherever it is that Saturn goes, it asks us, can I do this for the rest of my life? It encourages us to evaluate the sacrifices that have been there, but also where it is that we next desire to go. And is it going to build on those sacrifices, or do we need to go another way? No matter how hard it is, with Saturn, we get honest, and that fuels healthy self-respect in the process. Well, it is this week, on Monday, September 1st, that Saturn will retrograde back into the sign of Pisces, wrapping up this extended stay that in one way or another has been active since March of 2023. And it was just earlier this year, the 25th of May, that we had Saturn step into the sign of Aries. Now retrograding back is inviting us to wrap up those loose ends as to an understanding of where the responsible thing, the mature thing, the healthy thing to do to allow certain endings to occur. They ultimately are going to invite us to live that much more fully. In fact, we can see that sense of connection to what our truth is, what our understanding is, what a new chapter in our life just might be that we're actually willing to work towards, which makes it that much more meaningful to us, knowing that as much as loss can happen, we can build on our gains as well. And that makes this time that much more valuable as we realize what stays and what goes, but importantly as well, because Saturn is the incarnation of this lifetime, the finiteness of this lifetime, our own answers to, can I do this for the rest of my life? They're going to start to become that much more clear. But this time around, the answers are empowering. The answers help us to appreciate what it is we're moving away from, but more importantly, where it is that we can get excited and enthusiastic about the new beginnings coming up ahead. Hello, fabulous friends, fans, and superstars. Welcome to your horoscope for the week of August 31st, 2025. I am your astrologer, Nadiya Shah. Thank you for being here. Come celebrate 19 years as a full-time astrologer with my very special 24-hour anniversary sale. It's the biggest discounts of the year. Only this Monday, September 1st, for 24 hours. Learn more, links below. One of my favorite astrologers out there right now is Alice Sparkly Cat. And in writing about the energy of Pisces, Alice associates particularly Saturn in Pisces with an energy of sorrow. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that if you are a Pisces or if you have Saturn in Pisces in your chart, that you're going to experience more sorrow than just about anybody else out there. But when we look at this energy archetypally, the sorrow comes from loss, and many times loss comes hand in hand with some grief, depending on how attached we were to what it is that we have lost. Now, this could represent, in my opinion, any person, place, thing, or situation. And sometimes it really is where very strong love was there and it's gone, that we feel the loss that much more. But it isn't just about love necessarily, right? There's a certain type of experience we have that is a high, if you will. It is not necessarily called love. You could call it butterflies or sparks or chemistry. But that moment of connection with another person, the high that we get from that, well, it is, of course, temporary, but it's the loss of that that tends to wear off sometimes a few days, sometimes a few weeks, sometimes a few months after you first meet somebody. Well, the loss of that can bring a sense of some sorrow as well. And that, again, isn't just about a particular person, but can relate to a variety of life circumstances. And in some way, with Saturn moving through the sign of Pisces, we've been encouraged to look at where we are in terms of loss, in terms of grief. And for some of us, it has felt as if there's more work to do moving through the stages of grief, if you will, including of things that we thought we had long ago dealt with or losses that we had a long time ago. A few days ago, I posted an interview I did with my dear friend, Dr. Patricia Bell, and one of her books is called Timeless Love, and it is about grief, but it's also about understanding our soul and spiritual connections to those people that maybe are not with us anymore. And she was saying that there's a way to tune in to that frequency, that energy, that heart connection we had with the people who might no longer be here in physical form, so that we continue to learn from them, to grow from them going forward from here. But I would put forward that it isn't just the loss of people, and especially not in terms of their present incarnation coming to an end and they needed to move on, but all kinds of ways in which we might not only experience loss, but still feel a soul level connection. And whether that's a soul connection, whether that is more oriented around the high and now we're in the low, and everything in between, I think what's happening now with Saturn retrograding back into the sign of Pisces is that we are going to be encouraged to be honest with ourselves about what that is for us and where it is perhaps we've been in a spirit or in an energy of grief, and maybe now it's time to either heal it or at least admit it to ourselves so that we don't have to carry it into the future. Saturn in Aries is all about the new beginnings that we're willing to work towards. As I've said, Saturn asks, can I do this for the rest of my life? That question is so much more pronounced when Saturn is in Pisces, because that energy necessarily comes hand in hand with understanding transitions, understanding moving away from certain people, places, things, and situations, knowing that life is changing and something is changing within us. But the energy of Aries, it's about the beginnings we're willing to work for. It's about trusting that spark, that childlike wonder. And it's about being willing to own a sense of our own power and to do the work that owning that power sometimes requires. It is not uncommon to meet people who maybe they didn't learn growing up to ask for what they want, or they had to behave a certain way. And so they held back on or put a lid on what it is that they really wanted. They don't want to push so much. And that can make them averse to really dealing with certain things from a place of maturity and a place of honesty as an adult, if you will, to where it is that they are desiring a new beginning. Well, that is what Saturn in Aries has been trying to teach. It is now, as Saturn retrogrades back into the sign of Pisces, that we're encouraged to cultivate practical and meaningful wisdom as to what it is that didn't work, where it is perhaps there have been losses, and where it is we haven't allowed ourselves to feel those losses. Well, it is Saturn that's going to help us to do just that now. But Saturn, if anything, is real. It is practical. And coming back into this very dreamy, imaginative energy, well, it can take fantasy and like a thud, bring it down to earth, inviting us to evaluate how much our fantasies are really important to us, but really, what is reality worth to us as well? And where is it that we can bridge the two? This wrapping up is going to take us right just before February 14th. It's actually right around the 12th or 13th, depending on where you are on the planet, that Saturn will officially move back into the sign of Aries, not to return into Pisces for well over 2 decades to come. Our own minds can create stories. Our imagination as human beings is so powerful. But what are we actually creating with that imagination? I think a lot of us now are going to have a very profound realization in that regard, where you thought you already got that lesson. Now it's almost like it comes back to remind you where it is perhaps that you bought into certain illusions, but now you see them differently. And the fake stuff, the illusionary stuff, but also the lies that we tell ourselves, they just aren't working for us anymore. We want something real, yes, but we also want something that is meaningful, that shows kindness towards ourselves and others. And when we have all those elements in place, what we manifest helps us to feel that much more proud of it, that much more like we worked towards something that genuinely mattered to us. But as Saturn retrogrades back into the sign of Pisces for these last few months, there are a few encouraging things here. So one is, yes, it gives us that opportunity to look again at where it is perhaps we've been holding on too tightly and where it is perhaps we need a little bit more work to allow healthy closures to take place. That sometimes healthy closures are the right thing to do and they allow us to feel better about ourselves. And it's not always what we think. It isn't always the healthy closure of like a breakup, for example. Sometimes it's the end of a certain pattern or way of being with another person so that there can be a sense of a fresh understanding, a new start, and a new beginning within a context that you might already find yourself in. For example, in a relationship, in a career path, in a particular job. And so it isn't necessarily an all or nothing energy, but it is an energy that is also about being honest with yourself enough to cut your losses where it is that that's appropriate. And finding that right balance, finding that truth. Just when we think we had it, we moved on very quickly to those brand new beginnings of Saturn in the sign of Aries. Well, now Saturn moves back and we get to ask ourselves these more important questions. Now, I actually think this is going to be important collectively for a few reasons. And mainly, Saturn in Pisces is more occult, more esoteric. It's more held back. It's more about realizing what has been, whereas Saturn in Aries has lent itself to all kinds of new ways of doing things for better or worse around the world. We've seen this tendency politically, for example. It is Saturn in Pisces that's going to ask us, what is it that we are losing here as well? Now, sometimes what we are losing is our own humanity, for example, or what we're losing is sensitivity. What we're losing is maybe reasonability. What we're losing sometimes is worth it because we know we're going to gain even more. But this might be a time when we see people honestly evaluating that distinction and what that means for them. Important larger cycles might feel like they're coming to an end in ways that feel very practical and very embodied as well. Now, because Pisces is like the opposite of body, right? It's all soul, it's all psyche, it's all about what's happening on that level of spirit. Because of that, having a planet like Saturn here can feel like it doesn't necessarily make sense or get along. And this is largely because the very nature of Pisces is to feel, but the very nature of Saturn is at once practical, focused on manifestation, but also very scientific as well. As the ancient ruler of the sign of Aquarius, yes, it is Saturn that also represents that sense of moving towards greater rationality and understanding just what makes sense and doing things from a place that maybe we allow sort of a healthy detachment to take place as a way to empower ourselves to make real change. And all of us might have been engaged in that process in one way or another, but now we've had this little brief moment of moving on, of saying, I want this and I'm going to go here and I'm going to do that. And now it's almost like those brand new beginnings, they need to pause in some way. It is now that as we start to wrap up these deeper loose ends, we just might see what has been taking place for us differently in some way. In particular, I would say, since the start of the year, because where it is that Saturn is going to retrograde over in the months ahead. Well, that is the path that Saturn has been walking for most of this year. And so there's going to be us visiting again what it is that took place right into the middle of the spring, the later part of spring, how we felt about it, and what the evidence was showing us in important ways about where it is that healthy closures are being asked to occur. Some of us really might find ourselves feeling and being very different, especially if you really felt that shift of Saturn moving from the sign of Pisces and into Aries. Well, it's like that shift happens again with Saturn retrograding back. And this energy might feel more challenging for those who are what we call mutable signs. So these are signs that finish a season, and that is Gemini, Sagittarius, Virgo, and of course Pisces as well. Though I'll talk about that in a lot more detail in the short horoscopes towards the end of this video, and also, of course, in the monthly horoscopes, which should be publishing soon as I am recording this video. Alice Sparkly Cat has said that Saturn in Pisces is about making compassion a habit. But what does compassion actually look like? I don't think that Saturn in Pisces is about tough love per se, but it is about making compassion something consistent and to look at the limits of it, but also look at where it is we've limited it too much. Where is it that perhaps we need to show ourselves compassion in real and very practical ways? What does compassion look like for us? And it's not always what you think. It is not about being anyone other than exactly who you are today, loving it, embracing it, being it. The other thing is, I think that the energy of Pisces, well, it has to do with glamour. And you know, I do love glam, but glam is not beauty. Beauty is something that arises from within. Beauty is found on levels of soul, psyche, and spirit. And the actions that come from that place of purity, well, they make a person that much more beautiful. Now, if all of this wasn't enough, Uranus at the very end of this week is going to go retro. And it is the days leading up to that change of directions of Uranus that is likely to feel as if we know we are on the precipice of big change or a breakthrough. And it is rooted in truth. Because this is Uranus going retrograde, it means that there likely are going to be surprises around us, but ultimately they lead us back to ourselves. They lead us to examine that much more deeply what it is that meaningful freedom is for us and what it is that being our most authentic selves is for us. Because that's really what it is that Uranus wants. You know, if somebody comes to me and they say, you know, I feel stuck, I feel caged, I don't feel free, I'll look at their chart and I'll look at their Uranus and I'll say, you know what, act like the sign of your Uranus placement in your natal chart. Pay attention to the area of life that is the house of the Uranus placement in your natal chart, because that is the ticket to you feeling like life can start to become lighter, more free, and you feel that much more like you. But this is energy that is collective. And collectively speaking, considering that this is happening in the energy of Gemini, this is all about the news, the information, the modalities over which we communicate. These are going to be the spaces and places that are a surprise a minute for us. Now, because of the trine to Pluto happening simultaneously, chances are these are going to be insights, surprises, unexpected happenings that feel like they have a lot of purpose, if not a truly profound transformative quality to them. Again, this might be personal, but certainly could be collective as well, where we might learn something new about how it is that our communication modalities, the tools that we use to communicate, actually, there might be more going on there than seems to be on the surface, and what that's going to mean for us going forward from here. So if Pisces is the energy of imagination, of allowing ourselves to cultivate wisdom and compassion, Virgo, being opposite the sign of Pisces, is about looking at the evidence. And I know I've said before, to me, Virgo energy is the proof is in the pudding. That's what Virgo energy represents to me. And what that comes down to is, what's actually there. Don't tell ourselves stories. Don't tell ourselves how potential and hopes and wishes, have us seeing what we want to see, or color our vision at the very least, including our own fears, where sometimes we don't realize it. But it is a very different thing to actually be in the moment, to actually look at things practically. But it is about looking at the small moments and how they add up to something more. And I think this contrast is going to be felt that much more starkly. And for some, it's going to come very much as a surprise. It will be on Tuesday that Mercury is going to leave the sign of Leo and move into its home sign of Virgo. And so we've had about 2 months of energy of Mercury in Leo. This really is because we did formally have a larger Mercury retrograde season here, but now that's passed. And it is now as Mercury moves into the sign of Virgo. This is its home sign, but this is also where the ancients considered Mercury to be exalted, which means that Mercury most loves to be in this sign, is able to bring forward its very best. And I think that orients us around how it is that Mercury in Virgo is about appreciating nuance and is about appreciating different interpretations. But as Mercury comes back home to Virgo, and as in many ways, there's an overall sense of more busyness, an overall sense of looking at certain details. I will say this as well. Mercury is the messenger of the gods, right? Mercury delivers messages. Sometimes those are messages within us, what we come to realize. Sometimes it's the messages that are happening externally, outside of us, life delivering messages. And sometimes it is like we get a letter, we get an email, we get a text message. These end up being the ways in which a message is received. Now, as Mercury moves into the sign of Virgo, it's going to activate the recent new moon point. It was not last week, but the very end of the week before that we had a new moon at 0 degrees of Virgo. And if you remember, I was telling you about all the conversations that new moon was having, squaring Uranus, quincunx Pluto, quincunx Neptune and Saturn. Well, it is Mercury now that's going to also have all of those conversations. And it is that square to Uranus that I'm especially interested in, because I feel like if you're one of those people who feels like, well, was there a new beginning? Did something feel out of the sorts? Well, for some, they might have felt it right away. But it's almost like you need to hear of and know of the fuller impact of that new moon and which way it is that the energies might be heading. Keep in mind as well that it is going to be at the beginning of next week that we are going to start eclipse season with a very powerful lunar eclipse. And I'll talk a lot more about that next week. But here's the thing to be mindful of. It is going to be Mercury that is hand in hand with the sun at the time of that lunar eclipse. And there's also harmonious energy with Jupiter at play. I feel like whatever feels uncomfortable, what feels erratic, what feels like a surprise, that's almost discouraging or uncomfortable even as well, it just all might look really different once it is that we navigate just a little bit further, and especially once it is that that lunar eclipse reaches us. So we're right around the corner from that. There are going to be endings that ultimately feel very fortunate, but they are not possible without first shaking something loose. And that thing that's being shaken loose, the journey, the process has already begun with the recent new moon. It's just that now we become more aware of where it is that we are going through an evolution or a change, or how things actually are and the truth of it, and how that changes things for us in our pathway forward, going forward from here, but also how that contributes to some sense of a karmic closure. Some sense of closing an important karmic tie, or having a sense of a karmic chapter coming to an end, so that we can move forward and do that much more with this lifetime, living that much more fully. Finally, talk about bearing the lead in some ways. We have another hugely significant energy at play. That happens on Friday with Mars square Jupiter. So this square of Mars to Jupiter, it tends to happen about once a year. So it is somewhat of a rare event. And when it happens, Mars is usually in different parts of the sky. That's part of the dance that they participate in. And it is always some sign of going way too far and allowing adrenaline to get the best of us. Sometimes it is about allowing a sense of our buttons to be pushed. And I think that's especially significant now because it is that Mars is in an air sign, the sign of Libra. And it is here in the sign of Libra that it has to do with our one-on-one alliances and connections with others. Now, sometimes these could be business partners. Sometimes they can be romantic partners as well. But just know, some of us might be making some very important decisions and choices around what is happening for us in love and where we are with it. But I also think that for some, this might stir something of the past. And I say that because it is also Jupiter that is in the sign of Cancer, a sign that has to do with our past and really those experiences that form the foundation to our lives. And where it is that maybe some interaction with someone really had an effect on us, where it is perhaps even, I would say, if you have any residual anger at someone that you were previously aligned with or partnered with, whether romantically, whether personally, whether in business as well, you can expect perhaps some trigger to occur that stirs all those feelings and has them come right to the surface at this time. But it's what you do with it that really matters. Now, for others, it isn't going to be so much like you come across a post of somebody or they reach out to you or something like that, or you hear news about them. That it's your own awareness that is awakened at this time. And as a result, you look at the anger, the resentment that you've been carrying, whatever residually, whatever light layers of it, and how that might be interfering with or getting in the way of you feeling more at ease in your world, with yourself, or just allowing yourself to trust others more as you align with people. I think that just might be part of what stirs at this time for a lot of us out there. Now, where it is that you have a really good relationship, that's awesome. And you can cherish that and know that this energy might play out in other ways, including, like I said, business. But it is ultimately about finding our power in the midst of what we had hoped for and what actually is. Jupiter squares always represent going too far, going way over the top, being overly optimistic. Mars represents feeling a sense of passion or fire or maybe even anger as well. And so you can see how that Mars in Libra energy gets magnified that much more. And we might find ourselves reacting very quickly to whether a present or past person, interaction, partnership at play. And it is how we react in that moment that shows us some truth about where our impulses lie and about who we really are and what we think our power is and what we do when we feel like we have power or we don't have power. And remember, this is playing out in the context of a lead up to a lunar eclipse, which happens just 2 days later. And so trust what is stirred now. Trust what feels like it's coming to the surface because it just might be a part of a more compassionate and thorough, healthy closure that is set to take place so that we can live that much more fully. And that eclipse next week is also about the cultivation of wisdom. That's a big part of Piscean energy as well. It's a big part of Jupiter as well. Jupiter is the ancient ruling planet of Pisces. And so this need to cultivate wisdom, well, it might come on as an imperative that we've got to address right away. And even that is a moment of choice. What is it that wisdom looks like for us here? How is it that we show it? Where it is that we have far to go, where it is that perhaps we are further along than we realized, all of these lessons are likely to feel like they start stirring for us in powerful ways as we move to the last days of the week, so that it is next week that we have this entrance into a eclipse season, a time when the veils between the worlds are especially thin. Our lessons become that much more apparent to us. But first, we might need some trigger so that we're even willing to do that work, to identify where it is that that lesson and also that deeper healing is ready to take place. Well, it is that Mars square Jupiter that just might be the trigger that we need. However uncomfortable it might feel, ultimately it becomes part of that breakthrough, and it becomes part of us understanding something more important about ourselves and about what is real. And it is soul that is real. It is the spiritual lessons that are real. When it is that we get caught up in illusions, we make things so much more uncomfortable for ourselves, and it really doesn't have to be that way. And I think that is also a huge part of next week's lunar eclipse. This realization is going to be a game changer for a lot of people out there. Now, that eclipse I will be speaking about, and the other eclipse I will be speaking about in the month ahead horoscopes, so that should be publishing right around the early days of this week. What I love about this week for us, there's so much here. It's a powerful and meaningful astrological moment. I'm going to say, well, look, I think the really big energy is Saturn retrograding back into the sign of Pisces. Saturn will be here right until the 12 or 13 of February, depending on where you are on the planet. But really, I see this as such an important shift that is coming up ahead in time for Valentine's Day. Having said that, as Saturn retrogrades back into Pisces, I think a lot of us are going to be honest with ourselves about our dreams, our hopes, our wishes, our fantasies, where it is that we've bought into illusions, where it is that maybe we're getting in the way of our own sense of where new beginnings might be long overdue. But it's also about the work that compassion sometimes asks. And that work isn't just about like doing the inner work. That's a huge part of it, of course, but it's about acting in a different way, being mindful of what we are manifesting. And if that helps us to feel good about ourselves, you know, it is a very powerful thing to realize that people who feel good about themselves, they tend to treat other people, no matter how they perceive that person in terms of power or power dynamics, well, they tend to treat people really well around them because they have a sense of comfort within, because they have a way of demonstrating compassion towards themselves. They're able to give it that much more readily. But the reverse is also true, where it is that perhaps somebody doesn't bring that more compassionate stance. Well, their relationships, their connections with others, even their random interactions might feel more complex or might be filled with contradictions. Wherever you are in terms of that, wherever it is that other people, places, things, situations are meant to evoke and provoke some soul level awareness for you, well, all of that is likely to just come right up to the surface. Our work in this lifetime is soul work, but it is also what we do, especially when we infuse it with the intent of soul, that ends up fueling healthy self-respect. And that's what Saturn is always about. Well, thank you so much for watching. What do you love about this week? Let me know in the comments below. I love reading you guys, and to prove it to you, here's some of my most recent favorite comments. Thank you to everybody who likes, who comments, who subscribes, who shares, who thumbs up. All of it means so much. I'm so grateful for you. Thank you. And of course, if you want to know how all this wonderful stuff this week speaks to you in your sign, log on to NadiyaShahSuperstars.com, where you get expanded exclusive video scopes for as low as just $3 a month with choose your membership rate. Higher tiers get you all access passes to Synchronicity University events, consultations with me, and so much more. All of this in the Superstar space at NadiyaShahSuperstars.com. Links are in the description below. Celebrate 19 years as a full-time astrologer with my very special annual anniversary sale, 24 hours only. This is always the biggest sale of the year, and I'm so grateful. Look at that. Here I am, 19 years in, and it's quite incredible. And that journey has taken me in all kinds of directions, but what a blessing. And you make that happen, and I'm just so grateful for you. Now, having said that, yeah, there are going to be discounts. There's always big discounts at this time. There's an energy of celebration. I'll try to find a place, maybe on Instagram. Most likely I'll do an Instagram live to reach out to other people. Come celebrate my anniversary with me. 19 years as a full-time astrologer. I kid you not, here we are, and it's incredible, and you make that possible, and I'm just so grateful for it. Now, this is always the biggest sale of the year. I know some people, they literally wait knowing that this day is coming because they know they're going to get big discounts on all the different things that I offer. And so make sure you're on my newsletter at my main website, nadiyashah.com, so that you get all those discounts as we present new discounts throughout a 24-hour period. So it's September 1st. It was September 1st, 2006 at midnight in Toronto, downtown Toronto, no less, that I launched my website. And that was the beginning of my full-time career as an astrologer. And it is just such a privilege to have grown so much, to have come so far. And I know some of you who are watching, this is the first time you're seeing me because new people discover me every day. But also some of you who are watching have been watching for a while as well, because I've been on YouTube since 2008. Regardless of where I fit in with that on your journey, I hope that you will come celebrate with me. Whether I do an Instagram live or other ways in which we might communicate on social media, newsletter, or otherwise, regardless, there are going to be ways to celebrate this time. And I hope that you will join me. So again, nadiyashah.com is the place to make sure you are on the newsletter. And it is September 1st, 24 hours only. Celebrate my anniversary with me. Synchronicity University presents remarkable new programs that are starting this week. Yes, this week, new programs are beginning. And you have got, literally as the week begins, to choose your tuition rate. You've got a day because the choose your tuition rate lasts until the end of the 31st of August. But then we are having the anniversary sale as well. So just be on the lookout for that. But once that sale is over, you won't get that $5 a class bonus and opportunities. So I hope that you will join us because these are some really amazing programs. I'm going to start with my own class, Past Lives Part 2. And the first Past Lives class was extraordinarily rewarding, and a lot of students out there got so much out of it. It was one of my more popular classes, and I'm so grateful for your trust. But Part 2 helps us to go even deeper with the astrology chart and interpreting it in new ways to help bring forward an awareness of past life lessons and what they're going to mean for you in this lifetime going forward from here. And so as this week begins, sign up over at synchronicityuniversity.com. Join me in class for Past Lives Part 2 in the astrology chart, links below. Synchronicity University is proud to present the one and only Astro Auntie, Sarah El-Harar. I loved talking to Sarah. We had our interview, and yet what also happened was, well, the video portion of it didn't work out that well. So you get the audio of it, which is also super amazing as well. So I hope that you will give that a listen, give that a watch, whether you are on my Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, or even here on YouTube as well. You'll be able to have a look at that and have a listen to that. But it is very likely that I'm going to be doing something with Sarah in the beginning of this week over on Instagram as well. And I'm looking forward to that. So Sarah is going to be teaching a 5-week course, and it is all about aspects. That's it, aspects. Isn't that incredible? And so this is a deep dive into a part of reading charts that sometimes get overlooked, because as astrologers, we might place a lot of emphasis on signs, on planets, on houses, but the aspects are a huge part of successful interpretation, of understanding how energies in the chart communicate with each other, how they come together, and how you can maximize their potential by understanding the very nature of the conversation itself. And so that is part of what Sarah is going to be teaching. Again, it's a 5-week journey. And as we start this week, you've literally got like hours, maybe a day, maybe a little more than a day left to choose your tuition rate, as low as just $5 a class to learn from the one and only Astro Auntie. Please listen to that interview. I loved talking to her. She's amazing. She knows so much, and you can learn a lot more about her course and sign up now at synchronicityuniversity.com. Links below. Synchronicity University is proud to present the September 2025 speaker series over at synchronicityuniversity.com. You've got just a little time left at the very beginning of this week to choose your tuition rate as low as just $5 a class to learn from these incredible astrologers. And I am going to start with Hannah Tanajura. I loved talking to her. There is a reason that she is such a shining star. And Hannah is not only participating in this speaker series, but she's also going to be joining me over at the Omega Center in upstate New York at the first weekend of October. I'll talk about that in just a little bit, but know that she's that good and she's so ready as well. And so she's very special in terms of how she presents astrology and her understanding of placements. And she's going to be talking all about Juno in the astrology chart. Alejandro Ruiz is going to teach us techniques of the soul, the part of spirit. He's very inspired by medieval Islamic astrology, and he's going to bring that tradition of wisdom and help us to understand how to more deeply interpret that part of spirit in a way rewarding for us. Dr. Patricia Bell, author of Timeless Love. I know I spoke about her earlier in this horoscope as well. And she is going to be talking about When the Heart Speaks. And this is about astrology. So there's very practical astrological symbols she's going to be talking about. But at the same time, it's about how you can tap into it to strengthen that voice of heart and bring forward heart into the world for yourself and for others. Humaira Heder is going to be teaching about numerology magic, and Humaira is very special to me. Not only is she brilliant and practical, and she's old school with her numerology, so you're going to learn a lot in a short amount of time. She also is my aunt, so she's my mom's sister. And she's not that much older than me. So basically, she was kind of like an older sister when I was growing up for me. So it's so nice to have her now at the school to share her wisdom with all of you out there. And I'm really looking forward to her talk on numerology magic. Shu Yap is going to teach for Daria timing. This is a very specific technique that helps you to maximize the prediction layer of what it is that we do, which is an important part of our tradition as well. So you come to her talk and you will learn this technique and you'll see and be able to apply it right away to magnify that sense of your practice and that awareness around how you go about actually predicting that much more effectively. So you can see here, we've got an incredible cohort this September 2025 speaker series. As we start this week, you've got just maybe hours left or maybe a day left to choose your tuition rate, as low as just $5 a class to learn from these incredible speakers over at synchronicityuniversity.com. Links below. Join me at the world-renowned Omega Institute. Yes, I will be there as part of a larger program. It is Maurice Fernandez who is the lead in this program, but I will be sharing time with these incredible, brilliant astrologers. I mentioned Hannah Tanajura earlier. We have Lynn Bell, we have Anne Ortili as well, and of course, Maurice Fernandez. And the Omega Institute is a place that has been very important as part of my story. Actually, it was some 21 years ago that I got a scholarship to attend a program there over the course of a weekend, and it was life-changing. The experience itself in the program, the ground itself, the space itself, all of it ended up meaning so much to me. And what an absolute privilege and a full circle moment to now go back as one of their instructors. And that really is thanks to Maurice reaching out to me and asking me to join. So as I said, Hannah's going to be there. I'm going to be there. Now, each of us is going to be talking about goddess energy, different goddesses, Jupiter and Cancer, and what that says about the divine feminine and raising consciousness as well. So it's set to be important and profound and heartfelt and a meaningful, immersive event. I hope that you'll join us. It's coming up really, really soon. There are still spaces available on the Omega Institute website. I will be sure to link to that below. And thank you for those of you considering joining and joining us and already signed up as well. I thank you. And thank you. Thank you so much for this moment with you. Thank you for your trust. I'm so grateful for it. I've had an amazing week. A big part of it was the very successful event I did with Andy of Wise Ass Astrology in downtown Toronto. But I was so caught up in making the projector work that I forgot to make sure that pictures were taken, that video was taken, because I would really, really have loved to share that with you. For all that though, yeah, you can. And if you were there, send pictures over to me, send video over to me, please. I would love to make a compilation of that. And outside of that, well, thank you for those of you who joined, whether online or in person. I'm sending you guys so much love, so much gratitude. It was just so beautiful to see these lovely faces joining me in my hometown, coming from, in some cases, hours away, driving in just to share an evening with me and Andy. And it was just such a lovely time. So thank you again, everybody who joined us. And now I will also say, I debated saying this, I went to see Oasis with Andy of Wise Ass Astrology earlier this week, and it's only Andy and his determination that got us right to the front. We were literally front row. I kid you not. This huge stadium, right? We were front row, Oasis, and it was a life-changing experience. I can't stop listening to their music and to their poetry, so don't be surprised if, in the weeks or months ahead, you just might hear me quoting one of their lyrics. What a brilliant, brilliant songwriter Noel Gallagher is. But yeah, that was an amazing experience as well. And thank you for watching. I'm so very grateful for you. Enjoy these very big moves that are taking place this week. And stay tuned now for short horoscopes, Saturn in the sign of Pisces and what that means for you and your sign. Thank you again for watching. It'll be a great week. Enjoy. Everything that has a beginning has an end, according to, well, at least the movie poster for The Matrix Revolutions. And I think a lot of us have been experiencing this in one way or another, especially given that big planets have been moving out of Pisces and into Aries. Pisces, being the last sign of the zodiac, does represent a point of culmination, but it is a sign that also is learning about how love and loss are tied. And it's not just about romantic love, of course. It's about the feelings of desire. What we desire, well, we tend to desire it even more, knowing that loss can happen. Well, it makes it that much more precious. But the energy of Aries, very different. That is the first sign of the zodiac, and it's all about new beginnings and trusting what it is that fires you up, that gets you going, and has you feeling a sense of pure, childlike sometimes, enthusiasm. But what happens when we're asked to bring structure to these very areas? Well, Saturn has been inviting us to do just that. Wherever it is that Saturn goes, it asks us, can I do this for the rest of my life? It encourages us to evaluate the sacrifices that have been there, but also where it is that we next desire to go. And is it going to build on those sacrifices, or do we need to go another way? No matter how hard it is, with Saturn, we get honest, and that fuels healthy self-respect in the process. Well, it is this week, on Monday, September 1st, that Saturn will retrograde back into the sign of Pisces, wrapping up this extended stay that in one way or another has been active since March of 2023. And it was just earlier this year, the 25th of May, that we had Saturn step into the sign of Aries, now retrograding back, is inviting us to wrap up those loose ends as to an understanding of where the responsible thing, the mature thing, the healthy thing to do to allow certain endings to occur. They ultimately are going to invite us to live that much more fully. In fact, we can see that sense of connection to what our truth is, what our understanding is, what a new chapter in our life just might be that we're actually willing to work towards, which makes it that much more meaningful to us, knowing that as much as loss can happen, we can build on our gains as well. And that makes this time that much more valuable as we realize what stays and what goes, but importantly as well, because Saturn is the incarnation of this lifetime, the finiteness of this lifetime, our own answers to, can I do this for the rest of my life? They're going to start to become that much more clear. But this time around, the answers are empowering. The answers help us to appreciate what it is we're moving away from, but more importantly, where it is that we can get excited and enthusiastic about the new beginnings coming up ahead. How Saturn retrograding back into the sign of Pisces speaks to you in your sign depends on your sun, moon, and rising. Take all three into consideration. Synthesize the information to make it unique to you. And of course, there are lots more horoscopes available. There are extended special horoscopes of Saturn and Pisces over on my website, NadiyaShah.com. I talk about it regularly on my YouTube channel, Nadiya_Shah. And of course, in the superstar space, you can access special horoscopes and so much more. Just go along week to week as we explore these energies at thefutureismagical.com. All of those links are below. Aries, Saturn retrograding back out of your sign into the sign just before yours. You are one of the signs most likely to feel a shift. If you have felt that life is serious, or you've just become very aware of this incarnation or the finiteness of this body, well, all of that energy should feel like it starts to calm down in important ways. You just might be able to find solutions if that's needed. But for all that, it's about also knowing that life doesn't have to be as serious, and what it is and where it is that healthy closures just might be long overdue. It is about acknowledging where it is perhaps that certain people, places, things, situations have lingered on longer than they needed to. And this is also about you connecting very deeply on a soul level to a knowing that you have a lot more to do in this lifetime, even if you don't know what all of that looks like just yet. Taurus, friendships, group dynamics with Saturn retrograding back into this part of the sky. You're getting very honest with yourself about your group participations and how you feel about them and what your purpose is within them and what you gain and what you don't and what you lose. Now, this could play out in terms of a specific friendship and needing to give it the time or the energy to cultivate it, or this might be much more about your participation in a group, whether professional, personal, or otherwise. You're getting honest about your role within the group and how you feel about it, if it's worth the sacrifice to you or it isn't. Just when you thought you had the answers, you just might see it differently with greater nuance, and you get to decide what it is you might want to do next. Gemini, career, social standing, life purpose, and your understanding of a higher, more loving vision for your life. What goals are you willing to sacrifice for, and what goals maybe no longer are worth it to you? Getting very honest about whether or not you've chosen a career that you can continue to do for the rest of your life. Now, for some Geminis, it might have felt like you didn't have a choice, right? One path ended, another one began, or maybe you just understood life in a more expansive way for yourself, and that necessarily came hand in hand with some changes with a career or maybe challenges with a boss as well. For all that though, this energy does ask you to embrace a higher sense of destiny and to understand the legacy that you're building towards. Strengthening that knowing, that path is part of how you build something that feels that much stronger, that just could last a really long time. It's about understanding what your purpose is as well, and where your purpose might need more of your time, you're willing to give it. Cancer, long distance travel, immigration, citizenship, higher learning, and legal matters are covered here. And it is Saturn moving back into this part of the sky that invites you to get really honest about where you are to be in the world and where it is that feels like you have to be there, where you want to be there. Now, it is possible if it is that you are involved in a legal matter, if you are connected to an institute of higher learning, there might be important things that require your attention at this time, but also your patience, because Saturn sometimes asks that. But a lot of Cancerians are going to find this energy a lot more metaphorical, not so much about the fact that you have to travel, but more like you knowing that you want to and have to take a more philosophical approach in the cultivation of wisdom. It's the steps you take now that'll help you to really strengthen a sense of conviction in the spiritual and philosophical and maybe even political beliefs you have. Leo, profound change, truth, transformation, regeneration, and wealth. So for some Leos, it might be that you have to pay attention to a financial matter, maybe having to do with a grant or a loan or your mortgage or a scholarship and all of that. The great thing is when there is such strong financial energy, it means that the money you need is there. If anybody's navigating spiritual lessons while dealing with financial institutions, it certainly is you. The balance of give and take is part of this energy as well. And working towards the changes you desire, realizing how far you've come, how different you are now as part of embracing something new. Well, that just might be some very important work for you now. Virgo, partnership, love. This is what is going to call your attention now. Wherever Saturn goes, it's like we sign up to get honest with ourselves, important lessons, and we feel like there's more to actually do and get done. So depending on your starting point says something about your work to do. If you're open to meeting someone new, this is about asking yourself how in you are, how available you are, but also what steps you can take to make that happen. And you have that potential to meet people who really show you something about what you are actually wanting in love. Sometimes, though, this can suggest meeting someone with long-term potential. Now, if you are in an established bond, understanding the truth of the bond, what's really going on, how you really feel within it and about it is part of the learning. So if it is that you're in a good relationship, well, you just might get to see yourself demonstrate your commitment. But if that isn't the case, you're getting honest with yourself about whether or not you want to be with this person for the rest of your life and exactly what that entails. Libra, your daily life, your clients, customers, coworkers, immediate supervisors, and also how well you take care of you in terms of your habits and daily rituals. And so you might find yourself needing to interact more with these specific types of people I just mentioned. Saturn or any activity in this part of the sky brings with it a greater sense of, well, busyness overall. And so there might feel like there's more to get done in terms of the tasks at hand. Outside of that, though, being honest with yourself about making small changes that can add up to something more profound is part of the focus of improving health at this time. If you find a health-related matter shows up, it absolutely can find a resolution, but you will have to go to an actual specialist. Saturn here isn't about the faith healing or alternative healing, but it's a lot more about trusting the institutions, whether you normally do or not, and getting factual answers that help you to find real solutions. Scorpio, romance, flirtation, what the heart wants, what it is that brings your heart joy and happiness. And with Saturn moving through this part of the sky, you are invited to get honest with yourself of what all of that is for you. Now, sometimes love, and especially if you're open to meeting someone new, it requires work. It requires your participation. You're more willing to take those steps now. If it is that you are already with somebody, do you feel a connection on a heart level? Well, that might be part of an awareness that finds you. For all of that, getting very serious about a creative project could be part of the steps you're taking now that will lend themselves to greater rewards, especially in the fullness of time. Sagittarius, home, the past, your living situation, your family of origin, and your parents in particular, where that applies. Understanding your rootedness now. What happens often with this placement is you sort of feel like you want to close the door, block out the world, and be in isolation, whether that's alone or just with people that are especially close to you. Whether you're working on a project or if you have a home-based business, that might be getting more of your attention now. For some, this might relate to actually wanting to change residences in some way. And if that's the case, it is about taking real practical steps to understand how to make that happen. And in some case, being more realistic with yourself as to what changes make sense for you and maybe those that just don't. For all that, though, this helps you to understand and feel more rooted in where it is you come from. However you uniquely define it, it's up to you. That definition is your own. Capricorn, siblings, cousins, neighbors, and communication and learning of all kinds is covered here. And so it might be the case that one of these types of people I just mentioned, well, you have to pay more attention to those contacts, or you feel like they need you in some way, or it could be that there are things happening in their life and you just really don't have a lot to say or power over it, and that really is okay as well. But for all that, and aside from those particular connections, know that this part of the sky having to do with your learning, speaking, synchronicity, it is about conversations and communications all around, getting more serious about and honest with yourself about how you're communicating, what you really want to be learning, what you'd rather be learning might be part of the practical changes you make at this time. Aquarius, money you earn, money you spend, self-love and self-esteem are covered here. Now, many Aquarians might experience this in terms of money. So it has to do with being honest with yourself about how you're earning, how you're spending, and whether you can do this for the rest of your life, what things you might want to put into place to feel stronger financially. But because of the spending part of this as well, getting honest with yourself about how you're spending and whether or not that's working for you. When we have such strong financial energy, the money you need is there, but you are navigating spiritual lessons as part of it coming together. But for some Aquarians, this might not play out financially at all and have a lot more to do with the work that self-love sometimes requires, and you can make great strides now. Pisces, identity, who you know yourself to be, what matters to you most and first, all of it comes right to the surface at this time, and getting really serious about embracing the sense of responsibility you have to your own happiness. That is a big part of what Saturn asks. Understanding that you alone are able to truly understand and meet the needs you have to your own happiness. And oftentimes, happiness is cultivated through what you actually do. And it is cultivated through responsibility, not from responsibility. That might be part of the lesson you're navigating now. For all that, though, asking yourself important questions. What matters to you most and first? How much energy, how much time you're giving to it, and where it is that you might be wasting time might be part of the awakening that helps refine your pathway forward. Thank you again for watching. It'll be a great week and a great transit. Enjoy.